The Nebraska Cornhuskers are hoping to build off of what they accomplished last season under first-year head coach Matt Rhule, heading into his second season in 2024, going 5-7 last year, 3-6 in the Big Ten. But as we know, there was a lot of close calls where that record could have shifted to the winning side of things. He brings in some tremendous additions to the coaching staff, along with the great additions in the transfer portal. We're heading out to Lincoln, Nebraska to give y'all an inside look on the Nebraska Cornhuskers heading into the 2024 season. I'm Nathan Johnston here with my co-host Brad Hopkins. It's time to break the huddle. Brad, as I mentioned, a lot of upside for the Cornhuskers heading into the 2024 season under second-year head coach Matt Rhule. And look, Matt Rhule has been very talkative over the offseason on many platforms, On3, ESPN. He's been everywhere. And one thing remains the same. Matt Rhule, he is who he is, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. And I think a lot of people, including college football fans outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, can get behind. I think this is a really, really talented coach at a really traditional blue blood program that wants to turn it around. And I think he's the guy to do it. Brad, I'll turn it over to you. I know we've got a lot to cover for this team. We're excited. What are your thoughts on the Cornhuskers? What are your thoughts on Matt Rhule heading into year two?
Nate, I'm so glad you brought this up. This might be in our preseason teams that we're looking at. This might be my favorite team to talk about. It's just because, Nate, first of all, both of us are huge Matt Rhule fans. And so Nebraska fans, I hope you're listening. This might be a Break the Huddle episode that you just want to put on repeat because we're about to give the Cornhuskers a lot of love here. Nate, first thing you mentioned, man, so glad you brought this up. Nebraska last year, 4 losses by 3 points. So you hit the nail right on the head there. They're 5-7. If they split those 4 games, they have a winning record. If they win one of those games, they're 500. So Nebraska, in year one under Matt Rhule, him trying to, revamp the roster and everything, man, they were really, really close to begin with. So that's encouraging. Nate, the second thing I want to say is, look, this schedule is set up beautifully. And I'm not going to go too far into it because that'll be something we do, come fall. But Nate, I'm going to say until October 26th, when they play Ohio State, they could very, very well be 7-0 going to that game. I really, really think so. But I want to focus on Matt Rhule and this staff and these players. Nate, the first thing that stands out to me is Matt Rhule went out and made a slight change with his coaching staff, and that is that he brought in a former assistant that has coached and been under him a lot. And I think this was a really, really good move. And that is Coach Glenn Thomas. He's 46 years old, but he's been around football a lot. And Nate, a big thing for me is I love when guys kind of jump back between NFL and pro. Between college and the NFL, because I just feel like they get a really, really good feel for what football is doing and what's the hot trends and what's some schemes and everything that they can see. And he's been with the Falcons before going to Temple to coach under Coach Matt Rhule, and then he was at the Steelers last year, and then he comes back to Nebraska to be with Coach Matt Rhule as the co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And Nate, I just love this move that Coach Rhule has brought him back. I think that's a home run move, and the reason I think it's a good move is if you follow recruiting, you know that Nebraska landed a 5-star quarterback in Dylan Raiola. Of course, they flipped him very, very, very late in the process from Georgia, and that was a big-time move. Now, granted, there was some family ties there to Nebraska that obviously helped, but the bottom line is Matt Rhule was able to win that battle, and he did it. It's not, Dylan Raiola had been committed for quite a while there, and so he stayed on him, and that's a big win. Nate, that's going to be an interesting battle because Henrik Harburg, I believe I pronounced that correctly, but he's a guy that ended up taking the quarterback position from Jeff Sims last year and had good numbers. So I think it's just a matter of time before Dylan Raiola wins that job, but I don't know if that's this year. I don't know if it's next year. I think that's going to be an interesting battle to look at. Nate, before I turn it over to you, 2 really, really quick names. I think Coach Rhule in Nebraska recognized that they needed to go out and get some playmakers, especially on the offensive side of the football. and man, did they do that. The first guy is Jamal Banks. He is a junior from Washington, D.C., comes from Wake Forest. Nate, 2022 and 2023, this guy showed out. 2022, 42 catches for 636 yards, and last year in 2023, 59 for 653. At 6'4", 205, this is a guy that can go up and win the jump ball. This is a huge move to go out and get this guy. And then the other guy that they got, once again, a big physical, big body receiver, Isaiah Neyor from transferred from Texas, was at Wyoming before that. And Nate, I will say, looking at his time at Texas, didn't only had one career catch. Of course, he did suffer an ACL injury there, so that definitely limited him getting on the field. But Nate, in 2021 at Wyoming, 44 catches, 878 yards, and 12 touchdowns. So this dude has got big playability. So I'm going to end it with this. Whoever's Nebraska quarterback is, between the coaching changes, between Matt Rhule being Matt Rhule and whoever the quarterback is, I'm going to say I think Nebraska has got a really, really good chance to start the season 7-0 before playing Ohio State. Once again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I love Matt Rhule. I love what he's doing in Lincoln, and I know the Big Ten got tougher and it got better with the new teams. But Nate, I think we're both in agreement. Nebraska is absolutely on the rise, and Matt Rhule is building something special there in Lincoln.
Yeah, Brad, absolutely. You nailed it right on the head with so many key points and additions to this Nebraska Cornhuskers football program heading into this year. I want to mention real quick, you talked about Glenn Thomas and the addition and the experience that he brings to this Cornhuskers offense. And to me, this goes far beyond the coaching experience he has with Matt Rhule. Now, we know, as you mentioned, he coached under Matt Rhule at Temple, at Baylor, has some NFL experience. But the biggest thing that sticks out to me, Brad, and I think this could be a long play for the Huskers if they're able to be successful with him and maintain him or retain him, is he's from the state of Texas. He's from Eastland, Texas, went to Texas Tech. He knows how to recruit with some of the hardest programs. And he has a very, very thick tie to the state of Texas when it comes to the recruiting grounds. And we know what the state of Texas holds with so many athletes coming out of that state. So be looking out for that as well, Brad. Heading into the next year of recruiting for 2025, I think you're going to see a lot more guys from the state of Texas maybe making their way up to the Midwest and Lincoln, Nebraska. But again, you mentioned some really, really key targets for Dylan Raiola, the 5-star quarterback. Everyone's eyes are on. I really hope, honestly, you mentioned the quarterback competition between him and the other guy. I really hope that Nebraska sits Dylan for at least a few games, because I think right now there's a lot of pressure to get him on the field, to get as many eyes from ESPN to the average fan in Lincoln, Nebraska. Everyone wants to see this kid. And to be honest, I think it's a really good opportunity for Nebraska, but at the same time, it could be very detrimental to Dylan's confidence, because I don't care where you played in high school. I know he played at Buford High School, very talented program in high school football around the nation. When you go up to college, it's a big difference, even if you are playing a small FCS school in your first couple of games. It's not easy. And look, with Nebraska's schedule, it's not going to be easy. Now, you said that they could start off 7-0, and I agree with you completely. But that's just my thoughts on it. I think they need to sit Dylan for a couple of games at least before they throw him out there on the field, because it's going to boost his confidence. It's going to humble him a little bit, make him work a little bit harder, and hopefully in the end help him to grow and mold into the 5-star quarterback that everyone expects him to be on the field. He's going to have many chances in the spring game as well. That's coming up in late April. I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to mention a couple other transfer guys. You mentioned the wide receiver depth that they brought in. I want to mention a couple other guys. Matt Rhule knows one thing is true. They've got to get guys up front to protect Dylan for the foreseeable future. So what do? They go out and get interior offensive linemen from Florida, transferring into Nebraska, Micah Mazkua, I think I pronounced that right, 6'5", 335. Brad, Nebraska's always been known for big guys up front, but this is a whole nother level. I don't think since probably the early 2000s that Nebraska has been able to recruit the biggest guys in the nation. And I think Matt Rhule is doing a good job at getting back at that. When we look at the freshmen coming in from this year's recruiting class, you look at interior offensive lineman Jake Peters coming over from Cedar Falls, Iowa. 6'3", 265, again on the slimmer side, but getting bigger. They bring in another guy in interior offensive lineman, 6'4", 295, Landon Davidson from Broomfield, Colorado. This is a big addition for the Cornhuskers. Freshman tight end. This is a big one, Brad. Eric Ingwerson, I think I pronounced that right. 6'7", 245 from Papillion, Nebraska. That's right up the road. It's about 30 minutes, about 45 minutes from Lincoln. It's based near the Omaha area. That is a huge addition for them. And then they bring in a wide receiver, another true freshman coming in, 6'4", 190. You have to think he's going to get up in that 200 range. Big target for Dylan. Quinn Clark out of Bozeman, Montana. Look, I'm looking all around. I'm stoked about this team coming into the 2024 season. I want to mention a couple other guys real quick. They get the number one tight end in the state of Nebraska, and Carter Nelson as well, 6'4", 215. This was a very, very highly talented four-star guy that programs even such as Georgia were after, trying to pull from the state of Nebraska. And Brad, I think that's my final point. It's going to be very key for Matt Rhule to not only recruit around the nation, but make sure right in the Midwest, in those states like Nebraska, like Iowa, like Texas, like Oklahoma, that he's going into those programs, or excuse me, into those states and pulling the best of the best. And at the very least, making sure that he's getting the best of the best from the state of Nebraska, because look, it's limited, but there are some very, very talented guys there, and we're seeing just that. One more guy I want to mention real quick because I'm super stoked. Interior offensive lineman, true freshman, Brad. Preston Tumoa from Waipahu, Hawaii. 6'3.5", 300 pounds, Brad. This is a big boy, 18 years old, and he may only be the 3-star on some boards, but he's a 4-star for on 3. Number 2 interior offensive lineman in the state of Hawaii. Big pickup for the Cornhuskers. But again, Brad, I'll say it again. This is very, very promising for the Cornhuskers. If you're a Cornhuskers fan, I think you should be very excited heading into year 2 under Matt Rhule. If you're a Nebraska fan, let us know in the comments what you think about the Cornhuskers and your head coach, Matt Rhule, heading into year 2. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle.